Well, happy Sabbath, everyone. And we're communing again once more to look on this subject of the dragon's roar. We read about this in Revelation chapter 12, that the dragon was wroth with the woman and went to make war with the remnant of her seed. And we're looking around the world and we're seeing operations in place and systems and processes that are impacting our lives in one way or another. And they're all pointing to this climactic hour when the Roman Catholic Church will so intertwine itself in the Protestant churches and the political entities of our world that they will all speak with the voice of the dragon. It's not just the United States that will speak with the voice of the dragon. The whole world will be intoxicated with the wine of Babylon, such that every world leader will be speaking with the voice of the dragon. And even now, we can hear the voice of the dragon coming from various sectors of our world. Perhaps most notably is the United States of America. But there are many countries in the world that are implementing these mandates, and they will only get stricter as time goes on. Before we open the scriptures, let's also for prayer. Eternal Father and our God, how great thou art, that what you've hidden from the wise and the prudent, you've revealed unto babes and sucklings. We feel humbled that we have so great a message to share with the lost and dying world. May this message go beyond the portals of this room and get to the wider masses who need to hear. Bless us as we open your word now and abide with us. And we thank you. In Jesus' name, Yeshua our King. Amen. So what we'll do is to open with the third angel's message. What is the third angel's message? And then to demonstrate that there is a rival movement to the third angel's message that has been installed by the devil himself to set up a rival message called climate change, as strange as it may seem. And I want to bring that to your attention right now. So let's turn our Bibles to Revelation 14, verses 6 through 9. And I saw another angel fly in the midst of heaven, having the everlasting gospel to preach unto them that dwell on the earth, and to every nation and kindred and tongue and people, saying with a loud voice, Fear God and give glory to him, for the hour of his judgment is come. And worship him that made heaven and earth, the sea, and the fountains of waters. And there followed another angel saying, Babylon is fallen, that great city, because she made all nations drink of the wine of the wrath of her fornication. And the third angel followed them, saying with a loud voice, If any man worship the beast in his image, and receive his mark in his forehead or in his hand, the same shall drink of the wine of the wrath of God, which is poured out without mixture into the cup of his indignation. And he shall be tormented with fire and with brimstone in the presence of the holy angels and in the presence of the Lamb. Now this is the word of the Lord, and we pray his blessing to the reading, the hearing, the understanding, and executing of these his holy words. What we're seeing here in particular is the first of the three angels' messages talks about God, nature, and people, all in one. I want you to take particular care to that. I normally offset my words in blue, but this time I was a little careless, so the words underlined are not in the scriptures in black there, so I underline them in red right now. Notice what the first angel is saying in verse 7. He proclaims with a loud voice, Fear God and give glory to him, for the hour of his judgment is come. And look how we worship him now. Look how we worship Yahweh, the Creator. And worship him that made heaven and earth and the sea and the fountains of waters. So this is nature. This is the planet. But the message was to be given to every human being. That's the people. So we have planet and people in worship, in adoration. Look at it closely again. In fact, verse 6, saw another angel fly in the midst of heaven, having the everlasting gospel for all earth's inhabitants, to be preached to all those who dwell upon the earth, every nation, every kindred, every tongue, every people. As wide as the coronavirus goes, so wide it spreads. As wide as climate change goes, so wide it spreads. And what do you know? Satan has inspired the Roman Catholic pontiff to publish a document about the environment and how we ought to worship. Respect the Creator and the creation. And so it requires all humanity to engage in this act of worship. But the third angel, the three angels' messages, command attention to true worship. The first angel acknowledges Yahweh as the creator of heaven and earth, the seas, fountains of waters, all the things that climate activists are talking about today. That's our message. God has given us a message. So when we have an institution like the Seventh-day Adventist Church joining with the papacy to proclaim Laudato Si, we have totally lost our path. In fact, in my notes, let me read from my notes here. It says, we will document for you that the Roman papacy has created a rival message to the third angel's message in Pope Francis's Laudato Si encyclical of 2015 on the climate change issues of our times. And those who are professing Seventh-day Adventists, who are supposed to be teaching the third angel's message and are instead joining with the Vatican in proclaiming environmental convergence, have totally lost their way. And you can see from here and what will follow that this is a total hijacking of the third angel's message and placing the focus on something else. And sadly, those who were given the treasure of the three angels' messages have thrown it aside and are bandwagoning with Laudato Si climate change. What a sad state of affairs. The greatest want of the world today, my brethren, is the want of men who will stand for the truth and proclaim it in purity, though the heavens may fall. Men and women, by extension, men who will not be bought nor sold, and who are true in their innermost being as a needle to the pole. The great want today, the want for those who are champions, who stand for the truth and stand for the right, when champions are few or none at all. Daniel had to stand as a champion for the truth, and so did his companions. Champions were very few, sparse to be found, but they were champions anyhow. And you should clearly see that the Laudato Si campaign that the Roman pontiff and his helpers are carrying out is a terrible hostility to God, because they're taking attention from the commandments, statutes, and judgments of the Creator and placing it on the commandments, statutes, and judgments of the devil and his viceroy, the Roman pontiff. So it is helpful for us to see that we're dealing with nature and people here. The planet and people. Because the Bible is so clear that it says it should go to every human being, every nation, kindred, tongue, people of the earth. So we're dealing with Earth's inhabitants and Earth as a collective entity. And that's what the Laudato Si manifesto is all about. That's what the Paris climate change is all about. And that's what Glasgow, the COP26, is all about. Planet and people in worship. Remember, I document for you Climate Sunday. They call Climate Sabbath, which is Sunday worship. A rivalry to the very articles of faith etched in the Torah. With this in mind, let's try to appreciate the Pope's perspective in his Laudato Si rival third angel's message. In paragraph 3, he says, now faced as we are with global environmental deterioration, I wish to address, watch now, every person living on this planet. Every nation, kindred, tongue, and people is the address of the first angel, and by extension, the three angels' messages. The Pope is doing the very same thing with a rival message. I wish to address every person living on this planet. In my apostolic exhortation, Evangelii Gaudium, I wrote to all the members of the church with the aim of encouraging ongoing missionary renewal. In this encyclical, I would like to enter into dialogue with all people about our common home. End of story. All humanity about the earth. Its planet and people. We saw that in Revelation 13 and verse 12. He, the two-horned beast, he calls the earth and them which dwell therein, the earth, the planet, and its inhabitants, to worship. And worship in harmony according to the dictates of the wounded beast that has been healed. This should be very clear. Daylight should stand here. Every person living on this planet is involved in the Pope's encyclical. You don't get a religious exemption or a medical exemption from this one, because it's the weather. And they latched to it in the previous session this morning we discussed. They latched to this climate, the virus. It's in the air. We all breathe in the air. Breathe the air. So again, it's global. So, on paragraph 71, with his rival message, watch how deceptive Satan is. This statement could have been taken from patriarchs and prophets for the beauty it shows. But it's the poison that it presents. Watch now. Although the wickedness of man was great in the earth, Genesis 6:5, and the Lord was sorry that he had made man on the earth, Genesis 6:6, nonetheless, through Noah, who remained innocent and just, God decided to open the path of salvation. In this way, he gave humanity the chance of a new beginning. All it takes is one good person to restore hope. The biblical tradition clearly shows that this renewal entails recovering and respecting the rhythms inscribed in nature by the hand of the Creator. We see this, for example, in the law of the Sabbath. Very quickly he got to the Sabbath. We see this, for example, in the law of the Sabbath. On the seventh day, God rested from all his work. He commanded Israel to set aside each seventh day as a day of rest, a Sabbath. He provided a litany of Bible verses from Genesis to Exodus. Similarly, every 7 years, a sabbatical year was set aside for Israel, a complete rest for the land. Leviticus 25, we studied this on trumpets. When sowing was forbidden and one reaped only what was necessary to live on and to feed one's household. Again, Leviticus 25, 4 through 6. This is very clear. This is Torah language. He struck it right on the head. But this is what Satan does. He intertwines the truth with error to lead us off our path, because he appeals to the biblical Sabbath, the 7th day of the week, here in paragraph 71. Yet in paragraph 237 and 236, he would now redirect the focus to the Sunday, the first day of the week. He goes on. Finally, after 7 weeks of years, so those who think that the Sunday law is just about Sunday, and they're waiting for Sunday law to be passed, it's more than just the 7th day. It's about the commandments of God, the Torah. And if we're not understanding these appointed times and all that they involve, we will join bandwagoning with the Pope, as our theological overlords have done, because they saw that these things were nailed to the cross. So the Pope is just doing a good thing. They seem as if he's practicing something really good. It's just purely environmental. There's nothing religious to this, because these laws have been nailed to the cross, so we can gain some environmental benefit from it. They perhaps reason. He goes on. Finally, after 7 weeks of years, which is to say 49 years, the Jubilee was celebrated as a year of general forgiveness and liberty throughout the land for all its inhabitants. Leviticus 25:10. This law came about as an attempt to ensure balance and fairness in their relationships with others and with the land on which they lived and worked. Do you see the pattern throughout? It's planet and people. Planet and people. In this order, he has people and planet, because he says this law came about as an attempt to ensure the balance and fairness in their relationship with others, that's people, and with the land. Never leave out the land. That's why in Revelation 13, verse 12, it says, He, the two-horned beast, causeth the earth and them which dwell therein to worship. The earth is the land, the planet. And them which dwell therein are the people. And Satan would couch a rival message to the third angel's message that is calling attention also to nature, the God of nature, and it's the people of earth. A very slick, masterful undertaking here. He says, at the same time, it was an acknowledgement that the gift of the earth with its fruits belonged to everyone, planet and people. You see that. Those who tilled and kept the land were obliged to share its fruits, especially with the poor, with widows, orphans, and foreigners in their midst. When you reap the harvest of your land, you shall not reap your field to its very border, neither shall you gather the gleanings after the harvest. And you shall not strip your vineyard bare, neither shall you gather the fallen grapes of your vineyard. You shall leave them for the poor and for the sojourner. What the Pope is doing here, he's taking the Torah and making applications out of it for practical living today, such that wealthy nations will not just keep stockpiling their wealth, but they have to distribute it to the poor nations to cause them to gain some of the blessing as well. So it is not unusual in this philosophy for borders, national borders, to be open, and illegal immigration just floods your country, because it is about caring for the planet and the poor. And those in poor countries are disproportionately impacted by the effects of climate change caused by the actions of the wealthy countries. That is the thinking. And those who follow the Pope's thinking and are activated by his inspiration will continue in this path. And it shouldn't surprise you that the Roman Catholics who are in charge of the government such as Joe Biden, Nancy Pelosi, John Kerry, who is the nation's special envoy on climate change, are all seasoned and committed Roman Catholics, committed to the philosophy of Laudato Si. Did you know that Nancy was in Rome today meeting with the Pope? We'll talk about that too. But the Pope has more to say. On paragraph 7 and 9, he says, the work of the church. Here he actually grabs the ball of the third angel's message from our hands as Seventh Advent. The work of the church seeks not only to remind everyone of the duty to care for nature, that's the planet, care for nature, but at the same time, she must above all protect mankind from self-destruction. Do you see? I would pray to God and hope that you can see the pattern here. Planet and people, people and planet. So when you hear nature, it's a planet. Mankind, people, inhabitants, the poor, and so on. You're hearing people. And this is what the market beast system is built upon. With false worship. Pipelines in it. And we have documented, in this document here, that there's false worship announced. And just for the sake of those who have never seen it before, let me just put it here. Here's paragraph 237 of this encyclical. On Sunday, our participation in the Eucharist has special importance. Sunday, like the Jewish Sabbath, similar to the Jewish Sabbath, is meant to be a day which heals our relationship with God, with ourselves, with others, and with the world. That's nature. God, people, and nature. That's the triad. The law of weekly rest, that's the Sabbath. The law of weekly rest forbade work on the seventh day. And so, the day of rest, centered on the Eucharist, aka Sunday, the day of rest centered on the Eucharist, sheds its light on the whole week and motivates us. How? It motivates us to greater concern for nature, that's the planet, and the poor people. This is Pope Francis's Laudato Si of 2015, the document that becomes the architecture on which Paris climate change is built and will now be enforced in 2.5 weeks or so in Glasgow. When those world leaders come back by November 12th, after November 12th, we will hear a new set of laws, a new set of emergencies. This is why we know we're headed for an energy crisis this winter. We are headed for an energy crisis this winter because the globalists believe that if we burn the fuel for this winter, we're going to cause runaway climate effects. Jesus did say, pray that your flight be not in the winter on the Sabbath day. Now, you remember what happened last winter down in Texas and other southern states. So Texas in particular suffered the brunt of it. It was as cold as Alaska. And then power fell out, and most of the people were depending on electricity for heating. They didn't have dual fuel heating. I'd encourage all of us to get backup power and backup heating for this winter, above all. If you can't afford it, get a solar power generator. You have to fortify yourself because wicked people are at the hands of the ship here. And they mean that they're going to accomplish their purposes. So just appreciate for what we show here. There's a lot more that could be said. So let me go back to this Pope's encyclical, and you can see how we conclude at this point. The work of the church. You could simply say the work of the third angel's message. That's what he's saying. Seeks not only to remind everyone of the duty to care for nature, but at the same time, she, the church, must above all protect mankind from self-destruction. That's what the Pope is saying. So he hijacks the third angel's message. And those who are supposed to cry aloud and give the third angel's message with a loud voice are muted. They've joined in tow with all the other churches behind the Vatican. So I shared this part with you this morning, but in light of what I just shared regarding the sabbatical and jubilee years and all the other Sabbaths throughout the Bible, you'd think the papacy is oblivious to them. They are not. Even when Christians profess that they're nailed to the cross. See, the Vatican unearthed them in that encyclical. So I pick up in the middle of this because I shared it at length this morning. In Angelus, the Roman Catholic Church paper, the headlines of May 26, 2021 says, Vatican launches 7-year Laudato Si action plan. 7 years. Remember, we just saw a plenitude of how the Pope regards 7 year and the termination of the 7th year. He has a very clear understanding on how this works. Counterfeit, a Vatican official, Counterfeit said the reason for a 7-year plan is based on the biblical significance of the number 7. Now, you see, he knows what he's talking about because he read Laudato Si. The reason the Pope chose a 7-year plan is based on the biblical significance of the number 7. Year 1, he said, will be dedicated to planning through community building, resource sharing, and drafting local action plans. The next 5 years will be dedicated to concrete action, actionable proposals, concrete action, while the last year, the 7th, will be a sabbatical year dedicated to praise and thanksgiving and thanking God, he said. These people are very serious. This is not a game. It's not theater. This is salvation that they're dabbling around with. And notice how clearly they have articulated their objectives. So this is May of 2021. And that closed the year that marked the foundation. So beginning with this year, 2021, well, they ended, based on what I shared with you this morning, beginning with this year, 2021, into 22, is the first of such years to start the 7-year journey. And at the end, by 2027, 2028, there should be a sabbatical year. A sabbatical year. And so in order to get that, and to have a celebration of thanksgiving to God, they're going to engineer a plan that is workable. It's workable with the sabbatical, the weekly Sabbath. It will be workable with the monthly Sabbaths, be workable with the annual Sabbaths, the 7-year Sabbaths. It's right there. A 7-year program that they will celebrate a sabbatical year at the end of this journey. They're going to work 6 years and rest the 7th year. During this time, there's a period known, a year known as 2023. And 2023 has a date with destiny. There is precious little that could go wrong with these tightly executed plans. And I'll say more about that when we meet again. But we've talked about, broadly, about the World Economic Forum and the large bodies of financiers who have joined with Pope Francis to start a new global economy, the new reset, the global reset. This is all a part of the same philosophy. It's not something that's here today and gone tomorrow. It's here to stay. And all who stand in its path will be removed. Angelus went on to say, this process can only be achieved through partnership in the spirit of a synodal path to which Pope Francis is inviting the whole of humanity. Counterfeit said, saying the next 7 years will be a synodal journey working together. Yeah. When you hear synod, it simply means ecclesiastical, churches working together. But because it's the whole of humanity, the churches are working together with the government, with the states. The church and state journey together. Now, on October 4th, and I shared some of this with you, this is from the American Jesuit Review, and I want you to pay attention to the photograph in this screen, because when a photographer is taking a picture, the angle at which this is taken, they would get all the participants in the window. Cameras can do that today. They cut off this guy. See, he's cut off in the middle. This is how it came. I didn't tamper with this photograph. You can go to Jesuit America. They cut him off. He's a tall person. I don't know exactly who he is, but he's very tall. And there are others out on the left of the screen that we cannot see. There's purpose behind this. They didn't want us to see the Seventh-day Adventist, very tall and brilliant man, Gagnon Diop. And so, I believe, this is my personal philosophy, they altered this photograph so that the other people who made up that 40 or nearly 40 world church leaders would not be immediately seen by their parishioners. But we have already uncovered their secret. And we shared that. I shared that with you the past 2 Sabbaths. That Diop would be there. Headline says, Pope Francis and 40 faith leaders call for urgent action to combat climate change. Future generations will never forgive us. So, Pope Francis is urging all the churches to preach the gospel of climate change. That is a rival third angel's message. And it is to go to every nation, kindred, tongue, and people. The gospel of climate change, or the religion of climate change. This is a Roman Catholic paper, so they went on. You get it from the source. Unfortunately, I'll have to subscribe because I ran out of my free usage of this very handy website that gives me the secrets inside the papacy. In an unprecedented response to the grave threat facing all peoples worldwide from climate change, Pope Francis and some 40 faith leaders representing the world's major religions have joined in an appeal for urgent action. Notice, they don't use words lightly. You see urgent, grave threat, existential threat. This is something that must happen. And if tampered with, can extend to a death penalty in succeeding years. They're getting the 40% of faith leaders representing the world's major religions joined in an appeal for urgent action, signed today, October 4th, in the Vatican, and addressed to all governments participating in the 26th UN Climate Change Conference called COP26. Think about that. We're seeing that they're directing this appeal, but church document is going to the whole political world. Because the whole world is now enrolled. There's no nation that is not enrolled under the Paris Climate Change Agreement. The only one that was out was the United States of America, thanks to Donald Trump, who thought it was not good fiscal policy. And so with the appointment of Biden, we slipped right back in. And now they've shut the door, and they're going to work, and they're working very fast. So the 26th UN Climate Change Conference, COP26, is to be held in Glasgow, Scotland. I kept saying Ireland for the past several times. It's Scotland. From October 31 through November 12th. The appeal calls for decisive international political action to combat climate change and, watch now, to safeguard, restore, and heal our wounded humanity and the home entrusted to our stewardship. Heal and wound coming together. You gotta see the shape of Revelation 13. The wounded beast. This is a very oft repeated phrase by this poem. Healing a wound. Healing the wound. As though telegraphing that the wound has been healed. Remember, Revelation 13 verse 12. And he causeth the earth and them which dwell therein to worship the first beast whose deadly wound was healed. And you see this oft-repeated phrase. I shared it with you this morning, and here it comes again. Oft-repeated phrase about healing of a wound. The Glasgow Summit aims to accelerate progress toward the goals of the Paris Agreement and the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change. So it's not a new agreement. It's the old Paris Agreement that is being activated. And who wrote the Paris Agreement? The backbone on which Paris Agreement is built? You guessed it. Pope Francis. And how many countries signed up for it? All the free countries in our world. And one country was pulled out. And now it's back in play. And it's so interesting how this was arranged. And you see, the framers of this Paris Climate Accord, they were concerned that if an American election were held and someone like Donald Trump should take power, he had already telegraphed from 2014 that he didn't like this idea of inclusivism. He wanted an America first mentality. And with that in mind, they were concerned that if someone like him should upstage someone like Hillary Clinton, for example, who was supposed to have replaced Obama, then their hopes would be shattered. So they placed language in the bill such that it would not expire, even if a president of the United States should pull the country out, it would not become effective until one day after the next presidential election, the next American presidential election. Now remember, this is Paris Climate Change Accord. They didn't gauge it after the election in Paris or in any of the other participating countries. They gauged it on the United States election of 2020. That pulling the nation out of Paris Climate Agreement would become effective on October 4th of 2020. It could not be on October 3rd. But if the election of October 3rd determines the outcome of a different president, then Paris is secured. Paris is saved. The Pope's climate change agreement is protected. That's the insurance plan. And wouldn't you know that 30 days before that election of 2020, 2020, the Pope wrote another encyclical. It's entitled Fratelli Tutti, means brothers are we. We are brothers. We are in the same fraternity order. Let's work together for the common good. So they did. They worked together for the common good. And after 4 days, America's longest election, Joe Biden was declared the winner. And I'm going to show you now that even, well, in this presentation, that even if Trump had earned 200 million votes, Joe Biden would still be the winner, because they have an appointment with destiny. This is not a political campaign speech here, so don't get your politics involved in this. Try to understand the theological implications and the sabbatical year that they're announcing, and all the other timeline markers that they had already spoken for and could not change. The law of the Medes and the Persians that could not be changed. So that small stint that Trump had in office to kind of delay their program must now be accelerated. That's why they're making this urgent appeal for action. Appeal for urgent action that means right now, action, right now. I will say it this way. The speed at which these individuals are working, I expect to see Sunday law clampdowns within 2 years from now, within 2 years, such that by 2023 they have something in which to build. And by the end of the study, I believe you will all come to that conclusion on your own. The paper went on. The faith leaders represent an estimated 84% of the world's people that identify with a faith and come from the main Christian denomination. Think about that. 84% of the world was in front of the Pope on the 4th of this month. And they have all consented to the Paris Accords. Majority in a democracy, which they profess to be, the majority gets to rule over the minority. It doesn't need 100%. This is an overwhelming majority. 84%? That's an overwhelming majority, with others to come and so. Can you imagine if the United States were 84% fully vaccinated? They would be celebrating. 84% is a commanding majority. The faith leaders represent an estimated 84% of the world's people. So notice how far-reaching this is. From different faith groups. They come from the main Christian denominations, the two main branches of Islam, Sunni and Shia, Judaism, Hinduism, Sikhism, Buddhism, Confucianism, Taoism, Zoroastrianism, and Jainism. Christians, watch now, Christians present at the signing in the Vatican included Pope Francis. Pope Francis is now Christian. See, they have now elevated the papacy. Once ago, the Roman Catholics did not consider themselves Christians, but now Roman Catholics are Christians. And they speak with a voice and moral authority for all Christians now. Present was the Pope. Bartholomew I, the ecumenical patriarch of Constantinople, Metropolitan Heralds of the Russian Orthodox Church, representing Patriarch Kirill, the Archbishop Justin Welby of Canterbury, representing the Anglican Communion, Muslim representatives, including the Grand Imam of Al-Azhar, Ahmad Muhammad Al-Tayyib of Egypt, and Ayatollah Sayyid Mustafa Moghadamad from the Academy of Sciences in Tehran, in Iran. Just think of all these different places. While the worldwide Jewish community was represented by Rabbi Noam Marantz of the International Jewish Committee for Interreligious Consultations and Rabbi Daniel Schwartz of the Coalition of the Environment and Jewish Life. Very tightly and very broadly representation of cross-section of faith leaders that met with the Pope. 84% of the global population of religions were there signing this decretal that is now being sent off by dispatch to those who will be speaking in Glasgow, Scotland. Six years ago, they said, before the UN-sponsored climate change conference in Paris of 2015, Pope Francis published the encyclical Laudato Si. That document is widely recognized as having contributed significantly to getting many governments in supporting the Paris Climate Agreement, in which 195 countries committed to keeping global temperature rises to below 2 degrees Celsius. Do you see what was the whip that brought 195 countries to the table and gave them clarity and direction on how to manage climate change events? Laudato Si. They said it with their own words. This is not an Nancy story there. It says, those dialogues culminated with an event this morning in the Vatican's Hall of Benedictions, at which each, that was the 4th of October, at which each of the faith leaders signed the appeal. After the signing, Pope Francis handed the appeal to the COP26 president delegate. So the people who are going to speak at COP26, here's a delegate, the president delegate. So after the signing, Pope Francis handed the appeal, the docket, to the COP26 president delegate, Alok Sharma from the United Kingdom, which is hosting the UN conference in partnership with Italy, and to Ludi Di Maio, the Italian foreign minister. It's not no small, tweaks here. These are the action players that this faith document, signed by all the world's major religions, including the representative from the Seventh-day Adventist Church. I believe that's why they cut off that picture. Now it's being handed over to United Nations at their COP26 meeting so that they can give their blessing, enforce the wish of 84% of the world's population. COP26 in Glasgow represents an urgent summons to provide effective responses to the unprecedented ecological crisis and the crisis of values that we're presently experiencing, and in this way to offer concrete hope to future generations, Pope Francis wrote. We want to accompany it with our commitment and our spiritual closeness. He's carrying this close to his vest as a personal message from his heart to the world. Today's gathering, which brings together many cultures and spiritualities in a spirit of fraternity, brotherliness, can only strengthen our realization that we are members of one human family. Now watch this statement. You could almost find it in the Great Controversy and other of Sister White's writings. Each of us has his or her religious beliefs in spiritual tradition. Now, of all the 40 different religions here, we have our unique doctrinal differences. Each of us has his or her religious beliefs and spiritual tradition. But no cultural, political, or social borders or barriers prevent us from standing together, he wrote. They will lay aside all points of doctrine that are not held in common for the common good. But no cultural, political, or social borders or barriers prevent us from standing together, he wrote. To illuminate and direct this openness, let us commit ourselves to a future shaped by interdependence and co-responsibility. This is a powerful statement And I'm sorry to read it, but it's important for you to see it at full length, because it is the body of the prophecy that we're seeing fulfilled. Our faiths and spiritualities teach a duty to care for the human family and the environment. We go back to this mantra again. Care for what? Care for the human family as people, and for the environment, this planet in which we live. It lives, said the document. We are deeply interdependent with each other and with the natural world. We are not limitless masters of our planet and its resources. Further, future generations will never forgive us if we miss the opportunity to protect our common home. We have inherited a garden. We must not leave a desert to our children. How compassionate. Heart-gripping. More than 100 heads of state are slated to attend COP26. Pope Francis is expected to attend the opening session of the COP26 conference in Glasgow on November 1st. He's going to give the keynote address to kick it off in the right gear and give the moral authority to steer the path to completion. It's right here. Now they lie to us and say, oh, he might not be there after all. That's just smokescreen. He's already accomplished anyway, even if he didn't go there. He has already accomplished all that he desired. America, this is the magazine, the Jesuit magazine. Let's see who will be guest with the Pope. Coming soon. America has learned from Vatican sources that prior to his visit to COP26, Pope Francis will receive U.S. President Joseph R. Biden Jr. in a private audience in the Vatican's Apostolic Palace on October 29th. Really? President Biden will be in Italy to attend the G20 Summit of Heads of State in Rome on October 30 to 31. Why is Biden going to visit with the Pope hours before this global, life-changing summit? He's getting his last issue of marching orders. This is why Revelation 13 says, the two-horned beast is to make an image to the beast that was wounded by the sword and been dead. He's getting his marching orders so he can make that image. I shared with you this morning, it was on the last Friday, that Biden was playing with the number 666. And not just Biden, but the entire administration has been playing with that number 666 over the past little while that they've been in office. And I shared with you that the number 666 does not attach to the Vatican, to the papacy. While they are a despotic system, the number 666 of prophecy, Revelation 13, verse 18, applies to the two-horned beast, the United States of America. And it will become more evident with the unrolling of the scroll. So here it is. Biden is going to meet with the Pope in a private audience in the papal palace, the Pope's palace, so that he can be properly schooled, properly counseled, and would properly deliver the goods, because it takes America to make a difference at COP26. Only America's moral, financial, and military authority will suffice. The world was very angry with former President Trump because he angered the Pope. He disrespected the Pope by removing the United States from the Pope's brainchild, the Paris Climate Change Agreement. And Biden is now giving to the Vatican, to the world really, the child of the papacy. Laudato Si. Laudato Si is a child of the papacy. It's Sunday stamped all over it, and I've documented that. But who else will it meet? Who else is being guest with the Pope? before COP26. Wonder of wonders. Nancy Pelosi. This is today from the American Jesuit Review, October 9th, 2021. Pope Francis receives. That means she already had audience with him. Pope Francis received Speaker Nancy Pelosi in private audience. I was searching for this all week long and couldn't find it. And as I left this link active on my computer because I wanted to get an update. Because I knew Nancy traveled. But there was silence on her trip. If you did a search to see Nancy's meeting, it only says that she's going to be in England. Didn't say Rome. And I announced a week or so ago that she's on her way to see the Pope. They didn't say that. That was not in the on calendar. But we exposed that here. Pope Francis receives, not shall receive, but this is now past tense. Pope Francis receives Speaker Nancy Pelosi because it was active. It's still today, the 9th. Let's hear their story here. Pope Francis received Nancy Pelosi, the Speaker of the U.S. House of Representatives, in a private audience in the Vatican's Apostolic Palace on the morning of October 9th. The Vatican announced this at midday after the meeting had taken place. It's a matter of history. Did Nancy get her marching orders too? Will she come to Chuck Schumer and tell him what to do? And to, go to John Kerry, who himself had met with the Pope, and all the others? And they will go around, and they do have good communications with the Supreme Court. 7 of the 9 who themselves are faithful Roman Catholics. So there are laws. There are decisions in the hopper. Appeals in the hopper. And dare anyone stand in the way of Rome. We're well surrounded, my brethren. The White House and the Congress House are all taken over by Roman Catholics. And then all 3 branches of government, really. If you think about it, the executive, the legislative, and the judiciary are all taken over by the Church of Rome. Think about that. Let's say it again. The executive branch, the legislative branch, and the judiciary branches of government are all now in the hands of the Church of Rome. How did that happen? What's the meaning of this? The 2-horned beast will make an image to the wounded beast that is now healed. Ms. Pelosi, and strange enough they call her Ms. Pelosi and her husband was right there. Ms. Pelosi is the 3rd high-level U.S. official to be received in the audience by Pope Francis and senior Vatican officials this year, after John Kerry, the Special Presidential Envoy for Climate, on May 15th, and Anthony Bilkin, the U.S. Secretary of State, on June 28th. Do you see how tightly entrenched the Church of Rome is? All her tentacles are in the skin of the United States right now. And she won't release now. Won't release. It's like an eagle coming down and a serpent and having it in the talons. There is no mercy. She's good. That will be dinner. Goes on. Like President Joe Biden Jr. and Mr. Kerry, Speaker Pelosi is Catholic. I didn't say that. This is the American Jesuit magazine. They are celebrating. There is just such a joyful moment in Roman Catholic Kingdom right now. It is inexpressible joy. She was in Rome for the Inter-Parliamentary Preparatory Meeting for the UN-sponsored COP26 meeting in Glasgow, UK, on climate change, which the Pope was due to address on October 9th. She met with the Pope in Rome, although he was due to address his body. He says, COP26, see that name come up again. This is a group that will be meeting from October 31st to November 12th. And so she was Rome for the parliamentary meeting. If you read the news, you'll see that it says she was going to be in England. And I said, that doesn't sound right. And I went out without documentation. I said, Nancy will be seeing the Pope. But it was kept on the... I searched all week long. I mean, I scoured. I looked at DuckDuckGo and other places to see if I could find any track marks of Nancy. It was kept so quiet. But I don't know if any other paper has revealed it as yet, but maybe it has since it's now history. But the Catholics were perhaps among the first to announce the meeting is over, although it was never announced before. Here, Reuters News of October 3rd. Vatican hopes its pre-COP26 climate event will raise stakes in Glasgow. So, the Vatican hopes a meeting where world religious leaders will take a common stand on the environment can raise ambition on what can be achieved at next month's UN Climate Change Conference, its foreign minister said. Monday's day-long event, organized by the Vatican, the United Kingdom, and Italy, brings together about 40 faith leaders of the world's major religions and scientists from about 20 countries. These are the G20 countries. And one of the major religions in the G20 country, the United States, is the Seventh-day Adventist. And I've documented from 2 weeks ago, that Diop, the head of our Religious Liberty Department, would be there as a general, as an official, to assist in that deliberation. Not in an oppositional way, I might add, as I've shown you lots and lots of statements from him supporting that philosophy. The leaders, including Pope Francis, will sign a joint appeal, which I shared earlier, and hand it to Italian Foreign Minister Luigi Di Maio and Britain's Alok Sharma, president of the UN gathering known as COP26 in Glasgow. Here now. Here's what they say, a part of what they have written in it. It is our hope that, speaking of the Monday's meeting, it is our hope that the Monday meeting will give an impact to opinion in general, but within our faith groups and faith families, and also within the political community, to raise ambitions with regards to what can be achieved by COP26. Archbishop Paul Gallagher makes that announcement. Francis strongly supports the goals of the 2015 U.S. Paris Accord to reduce global warming. Over the weekend, he told young people that theirs was perhaps the last generation to save the planet. So, they're pushing this thing fast and furiously to the finishing line. Gallagher, who is British, said it was a sign of great hope that U.S. President Joe Biden returned the United States to the Paris Accord after his predecessor Donald Trump pulled out. I didn't say that. They said it all. You know how badly this affected their strategic plans when Trump tampered with their plan? I'm personally convinced if Trump had not been, he was not caused to lose the election, we would find him dead somewhere, in the White House or somewhere. Because this plan has a timeline that cannot be tampered with. Remember, there's a 7-year time window already spoken for. That 2020 was the celebration of the groundwork. And so on May 25th, they met to close that year. And I didn't have time to see if May 25th, and somebody can check this, to see if that compared, if it coordinated with Pentecost, not the biblical Pentecost, but the Roman Catholic Pentecost of 2019 to 2020. So if somebody could check for me, just check Pentecost 2019, then we can see when it was 2020. It's not going to show you the biblical Pentecost, which is always in the month of June. But it might very well show you, because that I think that was the day of Pentecost, and I wanted to validate it. So in our discussion, if you can share that with the room, I'd appreciate that. So it says here, Francis strongly supports the 2015 Paris climate change. Why? It's his brainchild. That's his production. They told us that Paris was built on Pope's encyclical, Laudato Si. So it's nothing new. Remember when we saw, and this is coming from Ellen White now, the story of redemption, but remember where we saw that the Pope says, no matter what you're religious, we all have our unique religious faiths, but nothing will bar us, nothing will debar us from making this climate initiative. And that's how he got 84% of the global population of religions to sign an accord with that. Here's Sister White. By this first beast, speaking of Revelation 13, by this first beast is represented the Roman Church, an ecclesiastical body clothed with civil power, having authority to punish all dissenters. The image of the beast represents another religious body clothed with similar powers. The formation of this image is the work of that beast whose peaceful rise and mild professions render it so striking a symbol of the United States. Here, the United States, here is to be found an image of the papacy. Not the papacy, but an image of it. Then she gives the words in red. Let's read them closely. When the churches of our land, uniting upon such points of faith as are held by them in common, shall influence the state to enforce their decrees and sustain their institutions, then will Protestant America have formed an image to the Roman hierarchy. I hope you can appreciate this statement for all that we've shared so far. That Joe Biden is romancing with the number 666 and now going to see the Pope on the 29th of this month, and then to go to Glasgow to endorse the Pope's decree of Laudato Si, in the bosom of which is the Sunday law, should make this statement just start, zooming in and out. When the churches of our land, uniting upon such points of faith as are held by them in common, shall influence the state to enforce their decrees and sustain their institutions, then will Protestant America have formed an image to the Roman hierarchy. We're so close, my brethren. We're not far away. They've already signed. It just needs to be ratified in Glasgow on the 20th, between the 1st and the 12th. Between the 31st of October and the 12th of November. They already have a signed docket from the 4th of this month, going over to the civil authorities now to get their stamp of approval. And perhaps by January 1st, we have a new set of laws. This is no game. Pray that your flight be not in the winter. January is still winter. Sabbath day. Then, she said, then the true church will be assailed by persecution, as were God's ancient people. When the church and the state come together, uniting upon such points of faith as are held by them in common, and will influence the state to enforce their decrees and sustain their institutions, we are looking at the image of the beast. Then the true church true believers now, not the Seventh-day Adventist denomination. Erase that from your thinking. Then the true church will be assailed by persecution, as were God's ancient people. Do you hear mandates? Have you heard of a thing called mandates lately? We haven't seen mandates as yet. We've just entered the era of mandates. He shall speak as a dragon. That's why Biden is already speaking as a dragon. It's only been 9 months of his presidency, and we're feeling the effect very keenly. The voice of the dragon is billowing forth. She went on. The beast with lamb-like horns, page 282 now, 382. The beast with lamb-like horns commands all. He's the one that is doing the balking. Commands all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in their right hand or in their forehead, and that no man might buy or sell, save he that had the mark or the name of the beast or the number of his name. Let me pause there. Do we have an issue today with buying and selling? How many people have lost their jobs lately? How many people can't work for the government anymore because they don't subscribe to the mandate? If you don't have an income, you can't transact. And now under this new $3.5 trillion deal, when it's finished, if it gets approved, inside of that is that if you have an income of $600 or more, the IRS needs to know about it. So you can't get money under the table and someone pay you by Cash App or some other means like that. And they're going to eliminate cash. They mean to choke off every earthly support. It's a choke point they're putting on us. It's $600 now. Soon it will be everything. The whole thing is open. If $600 are open to them, everything's open to them. Your bank will just send over your monthly statements every month. And all they do is to scan for $600 or more. But they can scan for less if they want to. You can break up the $600 and say, okay, pay me $100 today, $100 tomorrow, and so on. And they're, oh yeah, that's the same depositor. So that's $600, or that's $800 or $2,000. The computer can handle that very skillfully. The beast with the lamb-like horns commands all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in their right hand and their foreheads, that no man might buy or sell, save he that hath the mark or the name or the number of the beast. Name of the beast or the number of his name. This is a mark concerning which a third angel utters his warning. It is a mark of the first beast, or the papacy, and is therefore to be sought among the distinguishing characteristics of that power. The prophet Daniel declared that the Roman church, symbolized by the little horn, was to think to change times and law, Daniel 7:25, while Paul styled it the man of sin, in 2 Thessalonians 3 and 4, who was to exalt himself above God. Only by changing God's law could the papacy exalt itself above God. Whoever should understandingly keep the law as thus changed would be giving supreme honor to the power by which the change was made. So this is how the two-horned beast is causing the wounded beast to be worshipped. It says here, whoever should understandingly keep the law as thus changed would be giving supreme honor or homage to that power by which the change was made. We've documented this in the past. Rome said we change more than the Sabbath day. Every Mosaic institution was changed by us. Roman Catholic Church says that. And we saw in his encyclical, the Pope looked at all these sabbatical functions of Torah and brought notice to them. And so, in order to curb climate change, just think about it. If you can get the earth to shut down production for 1 year and live it as a year of jubilee, how deep you'd be cutting back. And then add to that, you take the weekly Sabbath. You have 52 of that, those, or weekly Sunday, if they're 52 of those out of the year. That's about 17% of the year. The year is, so you're really putting a deep dent in the carbon emissions. But what they do not know is that that will not solve the problem. And when they realize, too late, when they realize that no matter all the restrictions that we've put in place, including saying that, we need to raise the bar from 1.5 degrees centigrade to 2.5 or 3 degrees centigrade below pre-industrial time, then they're going to get more vicious in their demands. Just like those who were giving trinkets and giving tokens earlier for vaccines, now they've turned and become demonic about it. They will do the same thing. And a death decree will follow to violate these church laws. So says the Scripture. That he will order a death decree to those who refuse his mark. 2023 as a date with destiny. Now this is my notes. These are my notes here. And I wanted to share them with you. Long before the 2020 general elections, November 3rd, in America, world leaders and policymakers had crafted their 5-year snapshot outlook of what key policies would be accomplished in the world towards the New World Order and climate emergency, among other related matters such as global economics and global health, etc. When the Paris Climate Change Agreement was enacted in 2015, they very cleverly inserted a line which suggested that a country could not retract itself from this agreement until one day past the next general election in the USA. Thus, the official pull-out date was to be effective on November 4th, 2020. This was a very wise plan, inserted in the unlikely event that the businessman turned reality TV star turned politician would gain access to the White House instead of Hillary Clinton. In what followed, we can appreciate that even if, and you heard me saying before, even if 200 million voters had voted for Mr. Trump, the tight time schedule against which policymakers were working did not allow for another 4 years without the Paris Accords being implemented. So it doesn't matter what. There was a time schedule that had to be fulfilled. Time magazine on October 21st, 2020, published this article entitled, "It's 2023. Here's how we fixed the global economy." Look at that word, fixed. Fixed has a lot of meanings. You know, when like someone fixed the books, they fixed an election, they fixed anything they wanted. They had to tamper with it. It's 2023. Here's how we fixed the global economy. Let's take a journey inside the mind of the telegraphing messages that they're giving us. Remember the date, October 21, 2020. It's written as though the author were standing in 2023 and looking back at what we've accomplished. This is what I want you to see again. You are in the year 2023, and you're looking back over the past 3 years, because you wrote this in 2020. You're either a prophet, or ventriloquist, or a channeler of demonic spirits, or you're following the script. You're reading from the script that was already hatched in dark, secret places that your eyes and mine would not have access to until now. Notice what they have. They have a needle. Just look at what you have the needle or the syringe here. There's a vaccine container, canister, or bottle. All sorts of things for climate change, windmills, solar powers, and a number of other things. And over on the left, you see the wastes, the environmental waste, all the things that destroy the environment. And the bridge between them is a needle and the vaccine. Notice that. And there are lots more needles over on the climate change side, the blue side. Do you see all the needles coming out? Needle. Let me put a little circle. Needle here. Needle here. Or syringe with needle. Street. Needle. And needle. So that's about 7 needles. 6 or 7 needles we're counting off there. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 needles. I don't know what the number 6 means. Maybe significant. But this is what Time Magazine has as a feature article. The year is 2023. The COVID-19 pandemic has come to an end. And the global economy is on the path to recovery. How did we get here? How did our economy and society evolve to overcome the greatest crisis of our age? It goes on. In an echo of the golden age of capitalism, the period from 1945, when Western nations steered finance toward the right parts of the economy, it became clear that new policies were needed to address climate risks, incentivize green lending, scale up financial institutions, tracking social and environmental goals, ban financial sector activity that didn't serve a clear public purpose. The European Union was the first to take concrete steps in this direction after agreeing in August to a historic 1.8 trillion euro recovery package. As part of the package, the EU made it mandatory for governments receiving the funds to implement strong strategies for addressing climate change, reducing the digital divide, and strengthening health systems. Notice the word that you want to look at, mandatory. The author was writing in 2020, but transported herself 3 years ahead to 2023 and then looked back in time. And this is the powerful genius of this, because it makes it seem as though this is some type of just time travel. It's not time travel. They were reading from the script and telling us what's in the script. The things that will, how they fixed the world by 2023. And notice carefully, $1.8 trillion recovery. At the time when this was written, that $1.8 trillion was not passed. It was being discussed, but not passed. The U.S. election had not yet passed. It was being discussed. Campaigns were going on. But the authors here of this article also forecasted the winners in that election. The winner of that election. But before I go to that part of the article, let's fact check what the author said. Here is news of 12/16/2020. That's December 16th, 2020. Euronews. European Parliament overwhelmingly passes 1.8 trillion EU budget for next 7 years. Next how many years? 7. We're dealing with a time window, my friends, that could not be altered. It's the law of the Medes and the Persians. This is Euronews. This is, look at the date. 16/12/2020. That means you don't have 16 months, so it's day, month, year they use there. So it's the 16th day of the 12th month, 2020. The Time magazine article was written on October 21st, almost 60 days early. And let me go back to that. The year is 2023. Looking back, the European Union was the first to take concrete steps in this direction after agreeing in August to a historic $1.8 trillion recovery package. So they have agreed, and they have now. It's now news. Date was not August, but so the month. They agreed in August. Now show that the discussion was going on in August, and the ratification occurred in December. The European Parliament has passed its 7-year EU budget by an overwhelming majority, paving the way for the EU to pursue key programs in the coming years. And this is principally about climate change. You now understand why the United States is pursuing a $3.5 trillion stimulus plan. The principal beneficiaries are those who are in the Green New Deal type climate, energy, climate change sector, who are dealing with energy and sustainability issues. So what we're seeing is that we're reading from a script that could not be changed. The timeline was already set from 2020. And Time magazine would go to press weeks before the election to telegraph how things are going to move from here on in, or here on out. More, it says, the $1.8 trillion euro budget and coronavirus recovery package was agreed by the European Council earlier this month and was passed in the EP on Wednesday evening with 548 votes in favor, 81 against, and 66 abstentions. Here back in July, they were discussing this. And you can see here, European Union leaders agree on spending plans for recovery. That's from the Wall Street Journal of July 21st, 2021. I won't go through the reading of it. Recovery plan for Europe. This is European Commission. And, didn't give the date here. I think this was the date. Let me see if I have it embedded in here. The date was December 17th. The European Commission says the largest stimulus package ever. EU's long-term budget coupled with next generation EU, NGEU, the temporary instrument designed to boost the recovery, will be the largest stimulus package ever financed in Europe, a total of $2.018 trillion in current prices. Will help rebuild a post-COVID-19 Europe. It will be a greener, more digital, and more resilient Europe. Remember, the document was written in 2020, and we're now dealing with, and in October 2020, and this is in December of 2020. 2 months later, you wonder, how was that known? They're reading from a script. They're telegraphing the information. It says here, the last step for the adoption of the next long-term EU budget was reached on 17th December 2020. So this might have been December 18th then. So it was reached on 17th December 2020. They said this is the last step. It was an accomplished fact. Here, from Quantum Run, predictions for 2023, future timeline. It says, read 398 predictions for 2023, a year that will see the world transform in big and small ways in 2023 is a year that will see the world transform in big and small ways. This includes disruptions throughout our culture, technology, science, health, and business sectors. It's your future. Discover what you're in for. Forecast for 2023. The first, the United Nations finally delivers climate plan to reduce emissions caused by a global shipping industry. They provide a link there. And I won't read the rest of all the other predictions. So I went to the link, Climate Home News, published 10/28/2016. UN to deliver climate plan for shipping in 2023. The UN shipping body will produce a strategy to curb greenhouse gases by 2023. Over 170 countries agree at talks in London on Friday. An initial plan from the International Maritime Organization, IMO, is expected to be released by 2018, which will feed into a UN-led assessment of global climate policies. I hope you're paying attention to these dates. 2018 was only days, about a week before, 10/28/2016, so just a week before the election of 2016. And so they had already promised to have something in place by 2023. And Paris is riding heavily on that. The Time magazine told us that Europe would be the one to lead out, the EU. And where's Glasgow, COP26 happening? In the EU. And the EU countries are the ones pushing this. And America comes to give them the moral support. With the Vatican, of course. Go back to Time magazine. More of their forecasts. It's October 21, 2020. It says, it's 2023. Here's how we fix global economy. Look at that word fix. They went on. The U.S. began to change its approach after November 3rd, 2020, when Joe Biden defeated Donald Trump in the presidential election, and the Democrats held a majority in both houses of Congress. Coincidence? Not just the presidential election, but Senate and Congress. They had that under the scope as well. That prediction covered. Let's check this out again. So when you hear about the results of the election, you realize that policymakers are working with a timeline that could not be changed. It's a 7-year timeline that cannot be changed. The U.S. began to change its approach after November 3rd, 2020. Remember, this was written on October 21st, when Joe Biden defeated Donald Trump in the presidential election and the Democrats held the majority in both the houses of Congress. Following his inauguration in January 21, President Biden moved quickly to rebuild frayed ties between America and Europe. He's going over there to do that now. Setting up a forum to share collective intelligence that could inform a smarter form of government, the digital government, digital economy. European governments were eager to learn from the investment strategies used by the U.S. government, like those led by Defense Research Agency, DARPA. These are the people who do all sorts of climate change things, and they're shooting things in the air and in the sea. Those of DARPA, to spur research and development in high-risk technologies. And the U.S. was eager to learn from Europe how to create sustainable cities and reinvigorate civic participation. And Europe, the Europeans are the ones driving Climate Sunday and all the other things I shared with you, Climate Sunday and the EU Sabbath. If we're going to do business with the EU, we have to work on the same time frame calendar so that we have proper business communications. Let me see how many slides. I have 2 slides to go, including after this one, so bear with me. Actually, let me See, it's actually 2 slides, including this one. Says here, this is from Sister White. The Sunday movement is now making its way in darkness. The leaders are concealing the true issue. And many who unite in the movement do not themselves see whether the undercurrent is pending. They're working in blindness. They do not see that if a Protestant government sacrifices the principles that have made them a free, independent nation, and through legislation brings into Constitution, Constitution principles that will propagate papal falsehood and papal delusion, they are plunging into the Roman horrors of the Dark Ages. That's before the beast was wounded. Last slide. There are many, even of those engaged in this movement for Sunday enforcement, who are blinded to the results which will follow this action. They do not see that they are striking directly against religious liberty. There are many who have never understood the claims of the Bible Sabbath and the false foundation upon which the Sunday institution rests. Those who are making an effort to change the Constitution and secure a law enforcing Sunday observance little realize what will be the result. A crisis is just upon us. It's a powerful charge here. A powerful charge. And we're seeing that there's a Sunday movement in pipeline. The year 2023 will come. But before that time, they have targets to achieve. COP26 is laying the foundation on how to execute over the next 7 years, 6 years really, or 6.5 years. So we're in the middle of a crisis, and we need to know how we stand, because the dragon is wroth with the woman. And remember, let me go back to this statement here, because Sister Y said, when the churches, Story of Redemption, page 381.2, when the churches of our land, uniting upon such points of faith as are held by them in common, shall influence the state to enforce their decrees and sustain their institutions, then will Protestant America have formed an image to the Roman hierarchy. Then the true church will be assailed by persecution as were God's ancient people. Persecution is coming. Troublous times are here. We're not fearful, however, but we know that Michael will stand up, or God shall come and will not tarry. But we will go through the test. We will go through the test. And may it be that we will, by God's grace, endure the test and receive the winner's crown, the overcomer's crown. It's a difficult journey ahead. We're told that in this crisis, many will abandon their position as the storm approaches. A large class who had been under the banner of the third angel's message will change ranks, give up their positions, and join the opposition. We're seeing that happening right now. We're seeing that happening. It's at our doorsteps. And we have eternal decisions to make. Only between us and our Savior. And the same philosophy, the same motivations, and the same values that we hold that will allow us to surrender our consciences. If we believe strongly against the vaccine, and because of a paycheck, we're going to yield to the vaccine, then the same mental processes that we use to make that switch, the same that we'll use for economic reasons to move on with the market of these systems. It's one and the same. one and the same. They're two right now, but they're fused into one and the same. This is a test run. And if you run with the footman and they weary you, he cannot contend with the horses. And this is something God is showing us right now. The same principles are at stake. If you believe that the vaccine is a gift from God and you take it, that's fine. But if you strongly oppose the vaccine, and just because you're protecting your paycheck, you decide to go with the vaccine, then those same values will be used to reason away your economic future, or reason in favor of your economic future when the true and final test comes, which is the Sunday legislation. And we're told, I shared it with you before, that it will be the final test. It will occur before the close of probation. It will be the test by which God will test his people, allow his people to be tested. So I just want to leave it with you here, my brethren, that we are living in a grand and awesome time. And we need to make our calling and election sure. The enemy will try to squeeze us and otherwise frighten us away, but we have this treasure in earthen vessels. We're knocked down on every side, but we're not defeated. Bearing about in the body the dying of the Lord Jesus Christ, that the life also of Christ might be made manifest in our own mortal bodies, and we shall demonstrate his glory to all the world. I will do this final statement from Selected Messages, Book 2, page 375. We see the world working to the point of establishing by law a false Sabbath, in making it a test for all. This question will soon be forced upon us. God's Sabbath will be trampled underfoot, and a false Sabbath will be exalted. In a Sunday law, there is possibility for great suffering for those who observe the seventh day. The working out of Satan's plans will bring persecution to the people of God. But the faithful servants of God need not fear the outcome of the conflict. If they will follow the pattern set for them in the life of Christ, if they will be true to the requirements of God, their reward will be eternal life, a life that measures with the life of God. Let's pray. Father in heaven, we thank you for that which you've shown us today. We realize that earthly tribunals have met in dark places, hatched out secret plans to control the world, control humanity in a multitude of ways, principally in our survivalship of this planet and our worship. Lord, we will not be presumptuous like Peter to say they will have to stand us down first. We ask that you help us to place our hands in the hands of the man who calmed the waters and stilled the troubled seas. May you give us the courage and the faith that is demanded of us at this time to stand still and see the salvation of our God. But the courage and the faith that will endure disappointments, setbacks, and privation, and distress even. Yes, that you may give us wisdom on how to navigate these difficult days ahead. Because, Lord, they have us hemmed around on every side. And who is able to make war with the beast? Who is able to overcome him? We can't. This is a well thought out plan and ready to be executed in only a few weeks from now. Lord, we speak faith and thank you that Michael indeed will stand up to deliver the remnant of his people whose names are found written in his book of life. He help us to be faithful to the end, that we all might receive the crown of life, be saved at last in your kingdom. Prepare us for the day of atonement. Prepare us for tabernacles. Lord, as the Sabbath day comes to its close also at this time on the East Coast, we give you thanks and ask that you may forgive us wherein we have erred in thought, in deeds, in our words. Give us clean hands and pure hearts, to diligently follow you, to do justly, love mercy, and walk humbly with our God. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory. We thank you and praise you in Emmanuel's name, Yeshua our King. Amen.
When we walk with the Lord in the light of His Word, what a glory He sheds on our way. While we do His good will, He abides with us still, and with all who will trust and obey. Trust and obey, for there's no other way to be happy in Jesus but to trust and obey.
Hello.
Go ahead.
So you understand that as part of that timeline, Sunday mandate, Sunday legislation should be in place by 2023?
Or earlier, yes.
And then
Because
if it's not, then what?
if it's not, then that's a matter of I'm reading from their script. I'm not making any prophetic pronouncements. I'm reading from their script. So I expect if they honored all the things in their docket thus far, and they want to celebrate a sabbatical year by year 2027, 2028, then they have to have achievable goals to show that. If it goes beyond that, that's going to be something that they have, that the Lord allowed to delay for our benefit. But we can see, when I showed what they said about 2023, it's a year where actionable goals must be shown. So I did not create the year 2023. Oh, by the way, I left out one very important thing. It's only 2 minutes long. Let me allow you to see this. Thank you for it. So a big part of this 2023 plan is Al Gore. Let me bring him to the stage here. And bear with me, please.
So in looking 5 years ahead, might be useful to look 5 years back. 5 years ago, just to pick one example, if somebody had told me that in the year 2018, marriage equality would be the law of the land in all 50 U.S. states, and gay marriage would be not only accepted but honored and celebrated by 2/3 of the American people, I would have said, well, I hope so, but what are you smoking? But it happened because that long struggle reached a point where it was resolved into a choice between what's right and what's wrong. And when that threshold was crossed, things changed. Social change sometimes follows a pattern described by the late economist Rudy Dornbush. Things take longer to happen than you think they will, but then they happen much faster than you thought they could. We are at a moment now in the climate struggle that will determine what the world in 2023 looks like.
Pay particular attention. I'm going to roll back just a tad here.
That will determine what the world in 2023 looks like. Will we be celebrating? Will we breathe sighs of relief? Or will we struggle with the burden of guilt that we are condemning the next generation to an impossible future? This year, is the beginning of the first 5-year review period where every nation in the world that signed up to the Paris Agreement, and the U.S. is still in, by the way, can't legally leave until the day after the next presidential election. And if there's a new president, excuse me for a moment, a new president can simply give 30 days notice and we're back in. So in 2020, every nation will be called upon to make an assessment of whether or not they can increase their commitments to do more in reducing greenhouse gas pollution and land destruction and deforestation. Because the cost of renewable energy is falling so quickly, this year we'll see 1 cent per kilowatt hour electricity from solar, because batteries are coming down so quickly, because electric cars are coming down in cost. India said in only 12 years, 100% of all their cars and trucks will have to be electric. I wish the U.S. could move that fast. China's leading. We're at the early stages of a sustainability revolution that is giving CEOs and executive teams the ability to manage electrons and atoms and molecules, the same precision IT companies have used to manage bits, and Diane can tell us something about that. It's empowered by the IoT and artificial intelligence, and it's changing everything. It has the magnitude of the Industrial Revolution, but the speed of the digital revolution. So I will predict for you, but I have an addendum, that by 2023, we will be able to say we are now on the way to solving the climate crisis. But here's the addendum. We have to make that prediction come true. And the people in this room, I call upon you to be a part of this commitment. The entire future of humanity is at stake.
Al Gore said a mouthful when he says we have to make that prediction come true. They had to make how we fixed the global economy by 2023. Remember, we read that. We saw that in our broadcast. And here he said it. He was in 2018 making this prediction. And he locked in on the year 2023 and said that he offered a prayer and said, pray that we have a new president. And the only way out is that was the cliffhanger. The presidential election of November 3rd, 2020 was the only fork in the road, as it were. And they got rid of that. So it's smooth sailing on high seas, and we're running it fast. So I didn't make the prediction, Ray. It was Al Gore who was making these predictions. I'm just reading from their script and saying what they have in store. They have a romance with the year 2023. If God overrules in their plans, then may his name be praised. But we need to be prepared for the times ahead. They predicted accurately the 1.8 trillion euros. They predicted the U.S. presidential election, House and Senate would be taken over by the same party that's ruling now. And all the other things that are happening right now, they predicted. And so we would be foolish not to believe that they're not working on their timeline agenda, especially when they mention a 7-year sabbatical Laudato Si action plan. So I will be humble enough to say, well, they were not faithful to their commitments of 2023, but for whatever, or the Lord gave us a window, a slight window of time. But you can see that they're within 7 years. Let's be generous. Within 7 years. But I know they're not going to wait for the sabbatical year to celebrate the Sunday Sabbath law. That's to celebrate all that they've accomplished. So perhaps by 2023 they have Sunday law light, and they start maximizing and start ramping that up, so that by the time 2027, 2028, they have a sabbatical year of celebration. These are the Pope's words. We want to make that a year of celebration.